Last week, John finished up chapter 20. We're moving on to chapter 21. If you remember, the Ephesian elders walked Paul down to the beach and with tears and praying on their knees, sent him off in a farewell. And we're really going to kind of see something similar in chapter 21. Paul is finishing up. He's going to finish up his third missionary journey today. Well, not today. It's going to take months and weeks of journey we're going to cover in a short amount of time. But I know it's gone fast, but Paul's covered a lot of miles. And we sometimes get lost in the fact that just because the text moves quickly, Paul moves as quickly with us. But we have to almost imagine in our heads these journeys taking days and weeks of intentionally being on ships and having conversations and interacting with people. And as we're going to see, he's going to stop at all these different cities on the way to Jerusalem. On the way to Jerusalem. But before I get ahead of myself, I have a question. What drives you? I know it's a weird question because you're like, well, I drive a car. No, why do we do the things that we do? Why do we do the things that we do? Because I think this is really getting at what Paul is doing. We're going to see Paul kind of come to a critical point in his journey. He's going to have this critical interaction. He's going to have it a couple times in this chunk. And he's going to be, in a sense, not challenged, but he's going to have what's ahead of him laid out before him. And he's going to have a choice to do something or to not do something. And Paul's going to continue to press on towards what he knows God is telling him to do. And so the question is really, why do we do the things that we do? Why do we do anything? Is it just because so often we get caught up in the everydayness of life and we just kind of tumble through because we have momentum? I feel like that some days. I feel like I don't have control of my schedule because it's just, I have to get this done because I didn't get it done yesterday, and it's the build-up of the last 2 weeks. My schedule's not my own. So my life feels like it's not my own. Why do I do the things that I do? You ever wake up and you feel like you're just doing it because you just got to do it? Why? So, here's what I was thinking about with this. As a parent, I've learned a lot from what does it mean to be childlike in our faith? How do we be a childlike faith? And the thing I was thinking about with this, do you remember that when you had kids, or if you don't have kids, just imagine with me, you have younger kids and they're in a program or a performance of some kind, and they're getting out on stage, and they're you know how the leaders. I mean, just maybe imagine the Christmas program, and they're ushering the kids up on stage, and they're getting in line. There's all this quiet. There's this hush. You're kind of watching. You're looking for your kids, and remember, it's dark in the audience. It's light up here, so you can't, just from someone who's been on stage, when it's dark out there, you can't see real well. You can't see real well. And there's a lot of nervousness. There's a lot of nervous energy going on. And the kids are getting on stage and they're kind of wondering, well, how is this going to go? Am I going to remember my lines? Is everything going to go okay? And as a parent, I've sat in the back of the audience as well, saying, with the same nervousness of energy, saying, okay, how's this going to go? Are they going to remember their lines? Are they going to do something embarrassing? Like, how is this going to happen? Like, there's this tension both ways. Yeah, it's just kind of happening. Okay, and you can tell right away one of the first things that kids do, if you watch them, and you watch all their faces, they're looking and they're scanning the crowd. Why? Why are they scanning the crowd? Because they're looking for their parents. They're looking for that person, the grandparent or whatever. They're looking for that person, and you can tell the absolute second they find them. Right? Their whole entire face changes. And you can see their whole body language just shift. They go, okay, it's going to be okay. Well, the reality is they're still on stage. They still have to do it. They still have to go through what's uncomfortable, what's hard. But for some reason, it's different. They're there. I know they're there. It's not just a safety blanket. It's not just this, I feel comfort. It's, I can see the person that I'm here for, that I'm about, that my world is about. That's a childlike type of thing, a childlike adoration of parents or of grandparents or whatever. Insert whoever that is. You know, they get hurt. They run right to the person who's closest, who not just personally closest, but who they know. who they know will love them. When something great happens, Mom, look at what I did. And they want to look, and they want that. And you've ever noticed the kids? Eye contact is so, so important. I don't know what it is about Minnesotans, but we talk like this. Or if you ever have a conversation with guys about the weather or crops, we stand in a line and look out that way. This is what we do. This is what we do. Because if I stared at someone in the face, now we're going to have all these really awkward conversations after church. Because we're going to be super conscious of it. Like we don't look at someone in the face and go, how was your day? That would make a guy really uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable. But with kids, it's essential. With kids, it's essential. Why have we lost this as spiritual children of God? Why have we lost this? When did it go away? When were we so excited to go to God with something in our life? Or when something we went through or are going through is horrible? And the only thing I want to look at is I just want to see him, to know that he's there. I don't even need him necessarily to physically pick me. I just need to see his face and to know he's there. To know that why I'm doing this is still valid. Like this is what it's about. That I look forward to in my entire life. As Christians, we look forward to this our entire life to just gaze at God. To enjoy the beauty of knowing Jesus and pursuing Jesus. That's what I want my life to be about. So when I get distracted, when things are difficult and things are hard, I just want to be able to look up and see, oh yeah, that's why I'm here. Oh yeah, I can go through the hard thing because I see him there. And you look at Peter and he walked on water. He's doing something absolutely incredible. Breaking the laws of nature. And the wind is what terrifies him. And he takes his eyes off Jesus because he notices the wind. It's just the wind. We have wind down here like crazy. And then he starts to sink. Because his gaze shifted for just a moment. This is what Paul, I think, is embodying in this passage. As he hops from city to city to city, on boat to boat to boat, he is driven by his purpose of seeing God proclaimed. He is driven by his purpose of looking at Jesus and knowing him. That is utterly, completely his motivation. He's not caught up in the momentum. Well, I planted these churches, I guess I might as well finish them. He's not caught up in the momentum. He's caught up in the intentionality and the investment and the time he's spent knowing that God is God and he is God. There is no one else. There is no one else. So start with me in verse 1 of chapter 21. And when we had parted, remember this is Luke writing, we had parted from them and set sail, we came by a straight course to Kos, and the next day to Rhodes, and from there to Patara. And having found a ship crossing to Phoenicia, we went abroad and set sail. And when we had come in sight of Cyprus, leaving it on the left, we sailed to Syria and landed at Tyre, for there the ship was to unload its cargo. So, okay. That was 6 cities in 3 verses. That's a lot. That is a lot of traveling. Shelby, you got that picture for us? So, Asia, that country in Asia, on the very bottom, you can see it's Kos, right there from Karaya. I don't know how to say that. There's that little place of Kos. Then you sail the Rhodes. Then you sail to Lycia, which is Patara. Then you sail past Cyprus, that purple island down in the bottom. And you keep going down to Phoenicia. And then eventually, he's going to continue to travel down to Ptolemais, then to Caesarea Maritima, and then to Jerusalem. We're going to cover that in 15 verses today. 15 verses. That's how far we're going to go. But I want you to see in the midst of all of this travel, one, we keep in the back of our minds the time it took, because it's going to take us like 3 minutes to read this. But it's going to take Paul 3 weeks roughly to get there. And I also want us to keep in mind all of the things that Paul does at every single stop. Taking in mind, in the back of our minds, remembering, why do we do the things that we do? Why? He set sail to Kos. The first city up there is Kos. It's known to be a city of great medical information and technology. It was founded by the Hippocrates. If we're medical people, we've taken the Hippocratic Oath. He founded that city. So it's a very interesting dynamic. Then he goes to Rhodes. And there's a city right on Rhodes. You can see it's a little island. And Rhodes is known because it had one of the 7 great ancient wonders of the world, the Colossus, the fantastically huge statue that entered ships as they come in. A giant statue, an island full of people who were pursuing other gods, full of other gods. And the different contexts that Paul continuously engages these people, the medical people, the people who were literally erected 120, I don't know how big it was, 100 to 200 foot statue of a god because that's who they worshipped. That's who they put their trust in. Then they go on to Patara. They continue to move on again. And the reason they did these little ships is because Paul was on something called a coasting ship. He doesn't just hop on one ship and go to a single destination. These coasting ships are meant for shorter travel near to the coast, coasting ships. And they're to bring cargo here and there and drop it off for short trips. So Paul continues to do this, so he's stopping in each of these cities. And when we had come in sight of Cyprus, so it's the biggest part of their journey, the scariest part of their journey, because as we're going to see in a few chapters, maritime travel in this century is not safe. It can be a dangerous endeavor. Sailors were the toughest of men who did not have long life expectancies. And they continue to go on and go on and go on. Verse 4. And having sought out the disciples, we stayed there for 7 days. So they are in Tyre. You don't have to bring the picture back up. They're in Tyre and they sought out the disciples. Every place he stops, he's going to search out the disciples. This is Paul's 3rd missionary journey. Yes, he plants a church or two, but really on this 3rd journey, Paul is encouraging churches, challenging people. He's writing letters such as Corinthians. He's writing letters such as Romans. Final letters, because we're in chapter 21. There are 28 chapters in the book of Acts. We're coming down the end of this. I know it seems far away, but we're coming down to the end of Acts. And they searched out the disciples. Why? Is it because I just happened to be in the area and I'm like, you know what? I need a place to stay. I know this guy. I'm just going to look him up. No, they're searching out the disciples. And in verse 4, we're going to see something kind of unique happen. And through the Spirit. So they were together and they were praying. They were seeking the Lord together. When they got together, that's what they did. Because this is a church. How are you going to not be a part of a church and not pray and not encourage and not be a part of them? Because they're doing what drives them, what motivates them. They're there for a singular purpose. My job isn't to sell fish anymore. My job is to sell fish for the glory of God and to share the kingdom of God as I do this. His entire life, these people's entire lives have been flip-flopped, completely turned around because of what Jesus has done for them. And through the Spirit, the group of people there, the disciples, were telling Paul not to go on to Jerusalem. Don't go to Jerusalem. So there's something in the Spirit that is checking them. That's saying, hey, Paul, where you're going to go, it's not going to end well. Something's going to happen. I think you should stay. This isn't like a hunch. We're not talking about, I've just got a feeling. You guys this is why I ask what drives you. Because I've talked to people who say, well, I'm just driven by whatever is whatever because I can't control fate or I can't control destiny. I'm at their mercy. I just do whatever it is and I get through the best I can and whatever happens, happens. That's a really interesting way to look at life. Because Paul has a different perspective and some people say, well, it's the same thing because he's saying God's got my life and whatever happens, happens. Yeah, but it's not. It's not the same. Oh, it's inevitable. You guys ever... Okay, movie reference, so bear with me. If you guys ever seen the movie The Matrix... Okay, in the movie The Matrix, the one who is fighting this evil man for various categories, Mr. Smith. And he says this line in the movie, he goes, I will defeat you. It is inevitable. It is inevitable. This sense of you are going to lose. You are going to die. I am going to win. And I feel so often in life when we encounter things, we feel this sense of doom pressing upon us. Well, that's just the way it's going to be. That's just how it's going to be. I've tried praying, and it didn't seem to work for me that one time, so I guess I'm just going to have to go with what goes. What happens to me is what happens to me. This is not how Paul views life. This is not Paul giving up and saying, you know what, this is just how it's going to be. There's a difference between living life saying, I can't control it and I'm just going to let it happen, and saying, I have faith in the God who is the Creator. And He cares about me and is invested enough that He will not, because of His divine providence, He will have a purpose for my life. That when I do the things that I do, they are full and ripe with what God is at work and doing. It is up for me to walk in that and to obey that and to trust that He is doing His purposes. There's a difference between that and the non-personable, well, faith's just going to do what it does. I've probably done something and karma is going to come around. What a hard way to live. But I know a God who is wonderful, who is full of grace, who is all-powerful and a little terrifying, but yet who is God Himself and who is the one who I do things for. When I look out and I see and I can gaze at God and to see His beauty, I know it's very different than just living my life with faith, than trusting my hands to whatever time brings about. I'm reminded of a quote that talked about how God is so far outside of time that all of time is present to God Himself. And we sometimes still wrestle with, who is God? Why does He care? Is this God really there? No, that's on us to pursue, on us to know, on us to gaze. We've lost our kid-like giddiness, our kid-like dependence. Paul has not. Paul has not. When our days, this is verse 5, and when our days there were ended, we departed and went on our journey, and they all, with wives and children, accompanied us until we were outside the city, kneeling down on the beach, and we prayed. And we prayed. I would call him my best friend, and he's also a pastor somewhere. And we were chatting, this is months ago, about a really difficult situation that was going on in his church. And I remember we had this discussion just about, why are we here? Why are we pressing through hard things? And it was this, we've known each other for like 30 years. Why are we pressing through these hard things? And it's like, well, it's not, and the conclusion wasn't because I have to. It wasn't because it's my duty, although that is a piece of it. The duty was because I want to. I'm willing to do hard things because I know God has, one, done harder things, and two, God will walk with me through all these hard things. These people who Paul's invested time and love and this ability with, have come down to the beach to see Paul off. The families, the wives, the kids. Not because, it's the great apostle Paul. It's because it's my friend Paul. It's Uncle Paul. It's the person who's been around, who's changed our entire lives, who's introduced us to Jesus, the one person who's changed everything in this life for me. And they're kneeling down on the beach and praying. Can you imagine that scene? This is like hey, see you later. God bless you on your journey. They're kneeling on the beach. There's an emotion. There's affections here for Paul. There's affections here for Jesus. They've done ministry together, shoulder by shoulder. They've seen the churches planted. They're in Tyre. Tyre is not in a great place. That is a difficult place. That's southern Syria. That's tough. And then when they said farewell to one another, they went on board the ship and they returned home. So they went back to their home. They had come along on the journey with them from Paul, and they went back home. And Paul's going to continue on his journey on foot down south to Ptolemais. So when we had finished the voyage from Tyre, we arrived at Ptolemais, and we greeted the brothers and stayed with them for one day. So again, Paul's continually, yes, this is places to stay, but yet I think this is fantastic that Paul is intentionally stopping at all of these places along the way to where he's going. And on the next day, we departed and came to Caesarea. And we entered the house of Philip. We remember Philip. Philip was back in chapter 8, Philip is the guy who was witnessing to the eunuch in the chariot, who was running next to them and got up and explained to him the gospel through the book of Isaiah. And the guy stops the chariot and goes, I need to be baptized right now in this ditch, and dunks him. And Philip is vanished and teleported away by the Spirit to Macedonia. We don't hear from him. And this is about 20 years later, 20 years from chapter 8, we have Philip, who is in Caesarea Maritima, and he has 4 daughters. Philip the evangelist, who's one of the 7, stayed with him. He had 4 unmarried daughters who prophesied. These 4 daughters actually have a really interesting history. If you read Eusebius, he's a church historian. He was in the 300s AD, which is a long, long time ago. He writes about these 4 daughters of Philip in his history. And he calls them, where is it? What verse? Great luminaries. Great luminaries is what he calls them. They were the ones who were there. And he continues to write about them being people who encouraged and challenged the church and the believers in that area as they prophesied. Okay? Now, so often people want to jump to this and say, well, they were virgins, so they had all this with the pagan cult. No, none of that. The reason that is mentioned, some people say unmarried, some of your texts may say virgin daughters. The reason that's in there is to say they lived with dad. They weren't married. They weren't off with their husbands. There were 4 married daughters who were with them. And they prophesied. And while they were staying there for many days, because it's Philip, a prophet named Agabus came down from Judea. This is a different person. Okay, this is not one of the 4 daughters. This is actually a guy. Okay. Agabus comes down from Judea, and coming to us, again, note the pronoun use in this. Luke is writing, is coming to us, we, the people there, urged him. I missed the verse. Verse 11. And coming to us, he took Paul's belt. So he took it off Paul, or off his cloak, and he bound his feet and hands, and he said, this is what this says the Holy Spirit. This is how the Jews at Jerusalem will bind the man who owns this belt and deliver him into the hands of Gentiles. Sounds like just a few verses ago, hey, Paul, we were praying in the Spirit, and we really don't think you should go to Jerusalem. So what does Paul do? He continues on his journey. And here we are in Caesarea, and we have this dramatic prophecy from Agabus where he binds his hands and his feet together, and he says, Paul, if you go to Jerusalem, the Gentiles will take you there and beat you and arrest you. Somber feeling, right? And this joy of, hey, we're hanging out with Philip, his daughter. This is fantastic. But this guy comes, takes his belt, prophesies. Can you imagine? I mean, it's just this direct, we love and care about Paul. We don't want to see him go to his doom. By the way, this is a spoiler, but if you read the rest of 21, which we will get to, Paul in Jerusalem is bound hand and feet and delivered to the Gentiles and beaten. This is not a false prophecy. This is a prophecy of this is going to happen. We know this happens. It happens just so many verses later in the same chapter. So this isn't Paul running away from fear. This isn't Paul ignoring what the Spirit is telling him to do. This is Paul, in spite of what the Spirit is saying, just so you know, this is going to happen in your life. Paul is saying, I will continue on. In spite of what I know is going to happen to me, I am going to go on, because what motivates me is this, not fear of something else. So verse 12, when we heard this, Luke is one of the disciples who were there. When we heard this, we and the people urged him not to go to Jerusalem. Not to go to Jerusalem. And I love this response of Paul. And Paul answered, what are you doing? Weeping and breaking my heart. For I am ready not only to be imprisoned, but even to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus. He's ignoring what will happen. Not ignoring it. He's taking into consideration. He goes, that is nothing. I am willing to deal with that and far more for the sake of proclaiming and knowing Jesus. You look at Stephen. When Stephen was stoned, he looked up and he gazed into heaven and saw the beauty of Jesus. And Paul has that same idea driving us. Paul is absolutely not afraid of dying. We know this from his letters. For to die is gain. He's like, I'm not afraid of death. If I die, I get to be with Jesus. Yeah. It's kind of unnerving for us to hear that sometimes. It's like, man, I can't wait to meet Jesus. Because in the world that is opposite of what we should be saying and should be doing. But here's Paul saying, I'm not afraid of that. I get to be with Jesus. I can go through all of this and far more if I can continue to know him and gaze at him as I do this type of thing. And I can just imagine Paul being absolutely content, standing up there on the stage with a bunch of kids, and he's just staring at Jesus saying, I will sing my heart out for him. I will do whatever I need to do. I will act, I will lay myself out as a drink offering for God. Because this is what is most important in my life. Not just because I ought to do it. People that do things because they ought to do it don't go this far. This is one of the reasons why we know that Jesus and resurrection is so real, because we see hundreds and thousands of people dying saying, I will believe in Jesus. For centuries, people are doing this. This isn't because of good idea. No one dies for good ideas. They die for life-changing things. One of the books that Paul wrote on his journey was the book of Romans. And I kept thinking about this verse again and again. So if you have your Bibles, you want to follow along, we're going to be in Romans chapter 8. And I kept thinking of this verse. Starting in verse 18. He just wrote this. In the last, I don't know how many weeks or months ago, but it's fresh in his mind. For I consider that the suffering of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. The sufferings of this they're not even worth comparing. He's not saying, I can't even think of a good comparison. He goes, I'm not even going to compare them because they're so much greater than anything I can even think of. Than the glory that is to be revealed to him. Jump down to verse 24. You can read, Romans 8 is my favorite chapter in the Bible, so please read it on your free time. Jump to 24. For in this hope we are saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? He's hoping in something that is far greater, the resurrection. But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know what to pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. Paul is in a spot, or maybe get into a spot, or maybe he's leading us in a spot where I'm not even sure what to do or what to say, but I trust that God will continue to give me the words to say to him, to pray, to ask for my life as he leads it. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for the good, for those who are called according to his purposes. You can read the rest of it. Man, what a fantastic verse. Paul laying himself out before all these things. For I consider the present sufferings not worth comparing to the eternal glories to come. Paul's not just saying, I can't wait to die because this world sucks and I want to get out of this world and I just want to get to heaven. No. Paul is very content to be in this. We read in Philippians, he goes, to be with you is great, but to die is great too. And you can see in Philippians this wrestle back and forth of, man, if I get to see you, I get to be with the people who I love and who I've shared life with, but if I get to die, I get to be with Jesus, who makes everything great. And that's the reason I'm doing all of these things. And he's literally wrestling with this tension. And it's a tension that I want, because I like living. I like doing my life, but I need to think, why do I do the things that I do? Because that's really what chooses the things that I am supposed to be doing. And what does Paul say? For what are you doing, weeping and breaking my heart? He's pushing back. He goes, you know what I'm about. You know that my life is not worth what I am doing. You know that my life is greater value in the missions of Jesus. And that breaks Paul's heart. Because he's like, you need to know me, that what drives me is greater than me. What drives me is who I am. Paul's identity is not in question. His identity is not found up in how many churches or what's in his bank account or how big his family or any of those things, which are sometimes those are great things. His identity is completely caught up in Jesus has utterly changed me and made me his own. There is no question by Paul, and when people challenge him, say, please save your life, and Paul goes, no, I will happily spend my life for Jesus. To the point where he says, don't break my heart. I am ready to do what this is and even more. In verse 14, can you imagine Paul? I always think of Paul as like this short, bearded, balding, because all holy men are bald, right? This kind of guy who's... That was probably uncalled for. Short guy who's just kind of punchy. In verse 14, and since he would not be persuaded, Paul's mind is made up. His heart is completely lost. He is utterly gazing at God. There is nothing else that makes him happy. You don't see a kid up on stage find their mom and dad and get this big smile on their face and then keep looking. Maybe I'll find someone else who's going to make me just as happy. It's ridiculous. Not that there aren't other good people out there. There is no one that compares to Jesus. There is nobody. And so often we're fine looking around for other people, maybe someone else, because Jesus sometimes asks me to do hard things. Maybe if I find someone else, he'll make me, he'll challenge me and he'll transform me like no one else has, but he won't ask me to do hard things like Jesus does. That's the hard tension, because we do have to do hard things. But that's part of the joy that comes with being a Christian. It's part of the joy with not remaining who we are, but God's saying, I will take you and make you and grow you. I will not leave you where you are, but you will be asked to do a hard thing as we continue to drive through this to Jesus. And since he could not be persuaded, Luke writes, we ceased and said, let the will of the Lord be done. And after these days we got up and went to Jerusalem. And some days of the disciples of Caesarea went with us, bringing us to the house of Mnason of Cyprus, an early disciple with whom we should lodge. And so Paul goes to Jerusalem. He goes to Jerusalem. The disciples, we can't persuade him. He's made up his mind. He is set in who he is. He knows where God is taking him. This is the way. Brad, would you bring your team up? I came across this quote when I was reading, and it says, when we look up at the sun and gaze at it, the power of the sight which was particularly strong on this earth is once blunted and confused, as what can compare to the great brilliance of the sun? And then looking down upon the things of the earth, we see it becomes kind of dull. So what happens when we estimate our spiritual standard, our spiritual standings? As long as we do not look beyond the earth, as long as we're content with our own wisdom and our own virtue, we flatter ourselves and we make ourselves out to be all but God's. But suppose we once begin to raise our thoughts to God, to ponder his nature and how completely perfect is his wisdom and power, then how can we ever go back? This week, as we continue to reflect and to think and to seek out God, enjoy gazing at his face and seeking his wisdom, his love, and his grace. Have a great week. Please call with questions. See you guys.